Coming live from Canada and Israel are our guests tonight, two global top experts. Welcome to this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live, the show which ensures that you profit from your time spent here with experts either through their industry insights, information, or simply learning from them. And before I move forward, may I request you to subscribe, follow, like, and comment on whichever platform you're listening or watching to this show on. And today we have in this three nation live, we have from Canada, Israel, and India, we have got George Torok, global speech coach, Daniel Alfon, LinkedIn super specialist, and here I am hosting this show, and we'll try and put the right questions to this top guns to get the best out of them for you. In fact, you too can ask your questions live. Just write in the comment section on LinkedIn, Facebook, or YouTube, wherever you are watching this show on. And today, as you all know, we are discussing the subject, your message matters, and how you can deliver it effectively. So firstly, the very word itself, what does message mean? What's effective delivery of messages? Please explain it in terms of your areas, both you top guests. George in terms of communication and presentation, and Daniel in terms of LinkedIn. George first.
AJ, the message serves a purpose. So first of all, a person needs to understand what is it that they want others to do around them. And then they put that purpose into a message that they need to convey in a way that gets understood. First of all, it gets noticed and heard, understood, and acted upon. So a message is simply a way of influencing others to act.
Okay. And Daniel?
I don't have anything to add, just to mention that when you try to convey that message on a platform such as LinkedIn, it's a very noisy neighborhood, and the attention span of people is currently reduced. So you need to think both about the ways to get noticed, like Joe said, and then getting them to perform the action you would like them to perform.
Okay. So by and large, we are all on the same page exactly about what message is. But then what is effective message? That's what we are discussing.
AJ, an effective message is one that works. And unfortunately, there are too many ineffective messages. There's a lot of, as Daniel said, a lot of noise happening, not only online in LinkedIn, but also in everyday communication, whether it's texting, whether it's phone calls, whether people even talk face to face anymore. There's a lot of noise that gets in the way of the message. And so the message gets lost.
Okay. But George, in your setting, the work that you do, there is written message, there is presentation, public speaking, and one-to-one talk, whether between two people, bosses, boss and employee, manager, clients, and all that stuff. So in terms of whatever you teach, George, in terms of communication and presentation, what are the nuggets of information or tips, Torok tips, that you would like to share with our audience? It consists of a lot of people who are in different segments in business, small business, in their workplaces, and even day-to-day communication. How can they make their messaging effectively? How can they be best so that, as you say, inferior never wins?
True, AJ. And so a few tips to get started. First of all, be clear on what you want people to do and be aware of their mindset. Are they even paying attention to you? Be aware of the emotions involved, either on their side or your side, because that distorts a message. Emotion always distorts it. Now, emotion is necessary for people to act, but the wrong emotions distort the message. So be aware and focus on people and deliver one point at a time. an easy, a great bad example is when you get an email that's got 3 or 4 ideas in it, and you receive it. And what do? One idea catches your attention and you ignore everything else. Or one idea gets you angry and you respond in a negative way.
Okay. And Daniel, in your setting, on a LinkedIn setting, how
Yes.
does one do that? Because there, it is less of, talking directly, but it is what you do with your profile and the way you use the nitty-gritties of LinkedIn, the tools that are available there, that you communicate. Many a times you don't speak, but through your profile itself, you communicate. So how does one use LinkedIn for most effective communication? How do you communicate most effectively through LinkedIn?
Great. I'll start by asking the same question George has mentioned. Who are you speaking with, and what action would you like them to perform? That's the easiest way to start building a strong message. And you rightly said, AJ, that you can use also your profile to communicate your message. So let's think about a number of ways you can communicate your intended message. We may have focused so far on the written message, on text or post or shares, but you could also share videos just as this YouTube or LinkedIn Live video. And there are a number of ways for you to share video content on LinkedIn as a post or even as part of your profile, whether it's rich media or a cover to your profile photo. And that will make you stand out from 99% of LinkedIn users. Simply uploading a 20-second video message where you would speak directly to the ideal person you'd like to attract. Other than that, when you share posts on LinkedIn, you need to be aware of the fact that your network may see it, but you should always remember that other people who don't know you are also susceptible of reading this. So you try not to mix up your audience with your network. Sometimes our network is based on people we've worked with, but our audience is different. So try not to harass your network with messages that are intended for your actual audience.
Okay. Now coming back to George, you teach a lot of corporate leaders and a lot of people in different industries about public speaking. Now, without public speaking today, even for a simple person in presentation or anywhere else, you can't escape from public speaking, from presentations. Now, a lot of people have that fear of public speaking. So how to get past the fear of public speaking, George? If you can give tips on this.
First of all, AJ, having anxiety or some fear about public speaking is normal.
Okay.
People think that they're abnormal because they're nervous. No, that's perfectly normal. And in fact, it's not so much the fear of public speaking, it's the fear of being judged. That's what it is. It's about everyone's judging me and they're making an opinion about me. What if I make a fool of myself? Stop that thinking. So first of all, to get over that fear, believe in the value of your message. The only reason people listen is because they believe you have value to give. So believe in the message. Second of all, stop focusing on yourself and your symptoms. Focus on the audience. And when you focus on the audience, you take the emphasis off yourself. So stop worrying about, oh, my heart is beating fast. I'm sweating. I'm nervous. Oh, I can't breathe. Oh, and by the way, if you can't breathe, it's because you're holding your breath. Because when we get nervous, we hold our breath. We freeze. Oh, don't make a noise. There's a bear in the woods. No. Well, remind yourself to breathe and breathe like yoga breathing. Breathe deeply from the bottom. And if you do that before you start your presentation, you calm yourself. So remember to breathe.
Right. And George, while going for public speaking, people get bored easily. So how not to be boring?
Good observation. We get bored easy, and just look at what's happening in the movies. And so the real question is, it's not so much not how not to be boring, it's how to be more engaging, how to engage your audience. And I often get asked, AJ, how do I hold the attention of my audience? Well, you can't, not for very long. So you need to engage, and you have their attention for a few moments, and then you need to engage them again. And how do you engage? Well, there's many techniques that you can use to engage. Here's a few ideas. One is to pose a rhetorical question. What does this mean to you? And then you answer it. Or use the word you as you're talking. Here's how you can use this. Here's what this means to you. And the word you by itself is engaging. And another technique, and this is the last one I'll give for now, is to use analogies, anecdotes, and stories.
Right, right. Now, talking to you, Daniel, in terms of LinkedIn, now there is not as such a fear of public speaking, but in terms of sharing your views on LinkedIn, people are experts of their fields, many of them, but they are hesitant many a times in terms of sharing their views, sharing their expertise, maybe because of apprehensions of some cancel culture or people saying something which they may not like, or there is a lot of noise on several platforms, including LinkedIn, with people posting like it was an honor to get this award and that award and whatever it is, which is of very less significance, and people are afraid of to be lost in that thing. So how does one still deliver their expertise to the audience that they have on LinkedIn, and how can they do it without being fearful of anything?
Oh, AJ, that's a great question. And just to refer to what you asked, George, about public speaking, the same is right for LinkedIn, because LinkedIn seems from the outside as a perfect network where everyone receives awards and there's no failure. But the truth is that we all fail and we learn more from our failures. So we can't try to please everybody. And I'll use a quote: those who matter don't mind, and those who mind don't matter.
Right.
And you need to ask yourself first, why are you sharing this? And are you happy with sharing it, even if you get a backslash? And the second question, will your network or people who know you, when they see you perform that action, AJ, will they nod and say, yes, that's the term AJ would use, that is aligned with his style? Or will they go and say, what were you thinking? And lastly, the third question I would ask is your ideal prospect or the ideal person you'd like to communicate with, will performing that action make them get closer to you, or will this repel them? So first ask yourself, then people know you well, and lastly, the person you'd like to target. If you have 3 yeses, you're gold.
Okay, Daniel, then how do you now? LinkedIn also provides going live. That video facility is there now. A lot of people who are experts in their field, how can they utilize the LinkedIn live facility to connect with their audience, and how can they do it effectively, pass the message to their audience effectively? And again, the same question, how not to be boring? You are an expert in your subject, but you may just not feel so confident, and even if you are confident, sometimes you can tend to be boring. So how do you deliver your message effectively on LinkedIn live, as well as through messaging, normal messaging?
Okay, so the general question is thought leadership. Would you like to be perceived as a leader in your field? And our audience here has become experts in their field. So if you feel natural about video, you should start playing with video. But if you are unconfident, you can subscribe to the KJ Masterclass and learn from you and learn from other people, and start with written messages or articles. Articles present another system where you can read and edit and give the permission to someone to have a look at it and proofread it, and only then move to live. And even though it's called LinkedIn Live, AJ, you can also host or share pre-recorded videos.
Okay, that's great.
And that should remove at least part of the tension, because you know that if something happened, you would be able to cut it out, and the version you would present is clean with no accidents happening. And you could start with finding the right guest or the right panels who would be with you on that LinkedIn Live. Those are people who are likely to share the event itself and to comment and to like it and to make their network aware of that. And ideally try to provide value by taking your audience from point A to point B in a baby step that would make them go and say, okay, this is something I'm confident and now I know at least the first step. And then you would be able to say, I can show you how to move to point C. And George can show you how to move to point D or E or F. And by gaining the right and by providing value, you have earned the ability to move them further down your funnel, or maybe to a discovery call, or gated content, or a paid event. Start by helping them for free, and some of them will be ready to continue that journey with you.
Okay. So coming back to George, is that in terms of introverts and extroverts, if you have dealt with so many people over the years, so whom have you found as better speakers, introverts versus extroverts?
A good question that a lot of people struggle with, and people seem to think that extroverts are naturally better speakers, and the answer is no, they're not. Introverts and extroverts have different challenges, and I'll give you an example. And what I mean by introvert and extrovert, here's my definition: where they get their energy. An introvert gets their energy from being alone. An extrovert gets their energy from being with people and making noise. So an extrovert is more likely to speak up in a meeting, in a class, in an event, at a networking, and they just love talking and they love making noise, but they focus on themselves and not their audience. An introvert is observing and quiet and thinking, and an introvert is going to be the last one to speak most often. I am an introvert. I love presenting to an audience. I enjoy it, and it drains me. Because when I'm done, I have to go and alone somewhere in a corner and recharge. So both can be good, but they have different challenges that they need to be aware of. They need to be aware of who they are, how they get energy, and what that energy does to their audience.
Right. No, George, there are many times these occasions, meetings where, team meeting or, meeting with client, and there is a composition of, say, extroverts and introverts. An introvert has a very great idea, but extroverts are, taking away the meeting away from them. And many a times it happens that, that blabbering can make you lose your client, potential client and all. And how do you manage that situation where you can actually be able to share your brilliant views versus somebody who is just, speaking and speaking?
Yeah, good point. And one of the beauties of a virtual meeting is that the meeting leader can always mute someone who's talking too much. He could say, "Hey, George, you've been talking too much. Give someone else a chance." And a good meeting leader will survey the room, whether it's virtual or live, and notice the people who haven't spoken yet. And it helps if those introverts have a conversation with the meeting leader beforehand and say, I don't want to be the first one to speak, but sometimes I have a good idea. So please check with me and I'll give you a nod. I've got something to say. So there's an agreement there, and they say, okay, now over to you, Daniel. Yeah, we haven't heard from you. It's your turn to speak. So the meeting leader needs to be aware of the personality styles of the people in the room, and the person, especially the introverts, it helps if they identify themselves to the leader ahead of time.
Okay, and how do you deliver effectively in that point of commotion? Means, do you use what you call fisticuffs, come down to that. You tell the person to just shut up or you slap them. How do you do the effective part of it?
Well, if a person is speaking too much, it's up to the leader, the meeting leader to say something. But if the meeting leader is the one who's talking too much, the
Yes.
people in a room need to say, are you open to another opinion? Because if you're not, I might as well leave. I mean, and so you need to use, it helps if you have a little bit of humor, but ask a question that changes their perspective, saying, oh, I didn't realize I was talking so much. I'm sorry. What were you going to say? So you need
Right.
to break their momentum with a question or humor and move on from there. And if they don't shut up, maybe you just get up and leave and say, listen, you keep talking. I'll be back in an hour. I'm sure I won't miss anything.
Right. Now coming to Daniel. Now LinkedIn is a very different setting, but again the question, at the sake of introverts versus extroverts. Now that is the whole world that can see in their feeds. A lot of people just talking and commenting and sharing, resharing, and doing whatnot. And the real message gets lost. How do you get noticed on LinkedIn without diluting your equity? There are senior people, experts, without feeling like you are shouting on that platform. Because day by day, even on LinkedIn, a lot of earlier on so-called non-LinkedIn stuff is coming in, and that's the only platform, that's professional platform, that's available to almost all professionals. How do you conduct yourself?
So Ajay, it's a great question. And just like George mentioned, you can succeed whether you're an introvert or an extrovert. You would simply use different methods. And the good news as far as LinkedIn is concerned is that from my perspective, you don't have to invent a LinkedIn personality. Because you, Ajay and George, you have a real life personality. And the smart thing to do would be to reflect that personality on LinkedIn. And some additional good news is that on LinkedIn, you can be successful without sharing very often.
Okay.
And I cannot think of many social networks where this would be true. Because if I disappeared from Instagram or Twitter for 6 months, then most people will not see my content. But the number one action people perform on LinkedIn is actually visiting other people's profiles. So it may be that people are judging you by the quality of the latest action you performed publicly on LinkedIn, and whether you did that yesterday morning or 6 months ago, they couldn't care less. So you don't have to shoot from the hip and overshare and hijack the feed. You need to make each action count.
Right, Daniel. So now coming to LinkedIn itself, Daniel, like you keep on doing so much of stuff on LinkedIn. Now, how does one measure on LinkedIn as to what is being successful, what is not? In a public speaking setting, that's a different thing. But on LinkedIn, you have to do the same thing. You got to communicate as well as you got to measure the metrics. How does one take care of that? And what's the best way to do it?
Excellent. So initially, many leaders are obsessed and over-obsessed with the LinkedIn metrics. Has my number of connections increased sufficiently? How many people have viewed my content? How many followers does my page have? Is my SSI enough? Or how many people have mentioned me? But the truth is that the business metrics are the ones you should think about. In other words, you don't have to consider LinkedIn. You can consider LinkedIn as a black box and measure the top of funnel action you would like people to achieve. And that is revenues, orders, downloads, subscribers, demos, and inquiries. And if you're a public speaker, then does LinkedIn enable you to have an additional gig or an additional stage? And if you had a webinar that you ran every quarter, and you used to have 120 people sign up and maybe 60 show up, and by using LinkedIn, you have doubled the numbers of people who show up, and you increase your revenues by 20%, then you know that those 20% are attributed to the actions you performed on LinkedIn. You don't have to be thinking about the number of LinkedIn metrics. Simply find the right business metrics that is important for you. And if LinkedIn feeds that, you're in good hands. Because at the end of the day, you shouldn't say, wow, I'm popular, I have a gazillion connections or followers. You need to look at the bank account and say, yes, now I can select the stage I'm going to speak at, or I can increase the fees that I like, or I can have a real life metric that is important for me. So forget about the LinkedIn metrics, they don't matter. You need to focus on your simple real life metrics.
Okay, okay, real life metrics. Now, in terms of LinkedIn, again, Daniel, is that there is an option for creators to choose that creator option. And a lot of people who are living the normal life or being professionals, just simple professionals, the top notch professionals, they may be also seeing a lot of messaging, communication, content from creators, and a huge number of creators are there on LinkedIn. Now sometimes they may wonder that somebody is speaking so much, communicating so much, whereas
Yes.
I don't stand nowhere. Many people do not even understand this difference. Even if they know it, they don't know the difference too much. Now, how do they balance their lives vis-a-vis the creators who are sharing their content on LinkedIn?
Okay. Sharing content is one way to gain exposure. It's not the only one. And in many cases, it's an overkill. Because if you're oversharing, then people become blind to the sort of content you are sharing. If I know what to expect, and I know that every time that person shares the exact same type of content, then by the fourth or sixth time, I would not engage with that content. I would not click to view it. I would not comment on it. I would not watch it. I would not like it. So you don't have to be obsessed again with sharing. And let us maybe dwell on the creator mode for a second, because it is related with your connection strategy on LinkedIn. Okay, you could go for quality, basically connecting with people you know well and having referrals. Because if I look at your name and I see that George is a mutual connection of ours, if I know George well enough, I may feel confident to leave LinkedIn. That's the biggest secret. To leave LinkedIn, know when to leave LinkedIn, to communicate in real life with George. And at the end of that conversation, ask George, would you feel comfortable mentioning me or introducing me to AJ? And if George says yes, I would gain a meaningful introduction to you. Okay? So the creator mode has the ability to keep your network clean without polluting or watering down the quality of your network, because the default would become a follow button. And you can follow everyone on LinkedIn and you can make people follow you. It also has a number of advantages. When people go to your LinkedIn profile, AJ, they would see how I do what I do, and they would see a number of hashtags. And LinkedIn probably wants to increase the number of people who turn on the creator mode, because it gives all sorts of analytics to creator mode users and before everyone tries it. So I advise everyone to try and play with it. You can always go back. I used it and I went back to the regular mode, but I think it's worth trying.
Right, right. Now, George, in terms of, again, if we look at this whole message matters thing, message matters most, and it matters in all spheres of our lives. Now, beyond our normal lives, even in terms of diplomacy, social and environmental issues, governments communicating with governments, and the place in history that we are at the moment, so much of strife in different parts of the world, among societies, among people, why, with the increasing number of communication everywhere, with the tools getting added every day, hundreds of tools getting added, Why is it that so much of communication fails? The right messaging does not happen, or is it that the intended message itself is wrong and people can see through it? So how does one balance that? How does one ensure that the message is not inferior and that message that matters the most is delivered most effectively?
Challenging question, AJ. It's interesting. It's curious. I remember when the internet was first becoming popular with people, back in the 90s, late 90s, and we were starting to reach out. We were using bulletin board services that connected, and I thought at the time, oh, this is great. Now we can talk to people anywhere in the world, and that'll bring us closer together, right? Well, some of us, yeah, look at the three of us here today from three different parts of the world. We're talking. So some of us are coming closer, but others are moving apart. It's becoming more divisive, and people use the technology to express their divisive messages. And partly it is because people have become, or maybe they're just becoming louder, they're self-centered. They're self-centered, and they're not so much thinking about others, about community. How can we grow? How can we get better? Even when we compete, how can we get better? And people aren't thinking that way. They're thinking, well, you don't think the same way that I do. I think that the best background is green, and you think that it's blue. Well, I don't like you. and people are just making irrational decisions, and it's not the technology. The technology just amplifies the anger, the angst, the opinions that people before, in order to deliver an opinion, they had to write a letter to the editor, and it might or might not get printed. Now they just put it on social media.
Right. In terms of communication, George, even in companies where the top boss delivers something and the employees don't trust him, even if the message has been delivered with all the right words and all the power and authority at the top dog's command, why does it fail still? Why? What is the reason? Is the message inferior? Has it not been delivered effectively? What is it that is lacking?
And it depends. You'd have to look at it case by case, but I think you identified a key challenge, and that's trust. If we don't trust you, it doesn't matter what you say or how you say it, we don't trust you. So you might have delivered a perfect presentation, you've said the right words, but we don't trust you. And which means that the leader has failed to build trust with the people. And that takes work. That takes work. And see, we build trust based on what we see in the leader every day. Just because at once a month the leader stands up and delivers a great speech, but all month you've been treating us like crap, or you've been lying to us. So the trust has to be there all the time so that the message gets through.
Right. And Daniel, on LinkedIn now, there is a lot of messaging that goes, goes through all through the day and night. And the other day I was seeing somebody was making fun of a message that said that was a hiring message, and somebody said, we need fresher with 3 years experience. Now that was something which somebody saw through it and was telling that this is something not required. This is something not possible in whichever way they wanted to see it. Now, why does it happen that people don't get the basics of it, and companies and people, they keep on just doing things that on LinkedIn and all? So how do you make sure that your communication is top notch on LinkedIn? How does one ensure? How do organizations ensure that?
It's a great question and a challenging one at that. So I'd like to start by something George mentioned about the letter to the editor. To write the letter to the editor, it would take us at least a couple of minutes. And now it takes us 20 seconds to shoot that message. And in fact, there are hundreds of software houses and companies that offer you free automation tools that will basically spam the whole planet within a number of hours or minutes without ever reading their profile, without ever really deciding that this person is the right fit for you. And because it has become so easy to spam and to send those messages, many of our clients, when they receive an incoming invitation, they're stressed because they know that 20 seconds after accepting that connection request, they'll be bombarded with some offers of services they have never asked to buy. And that is because of those automations and that thoughtless practice. It makes it a lot more difficult for you to communicate in a genuine way with your audience. Again, in some cases, the answer is sharing educational, top of funnel, evergreen content that will make people attracted to you. So if you can think of the entrepreneurs you'd like to attract, and you can figure out the three most difficult questions they're asking themselves, what makes them tick, what makes them wake up at night, and you try to produce or even curate or repurpose content around that, then they're likely to discover you. And content is a great way for you to stand out. And when I get an invitation from someone I don't know, I simply reply to that person saying, thank you very much, John Doe, for that invitation. I don't think we've ever worked together. Can I be of help? And 90% of people never reply. But if, once in a quarter, maybe someone will reply and there is a genuine opportunity for us to communicate, then I would do it. And to reply to that message takes 20 seconds. It's the best way for me to keep my network engaged and clean, and also be open to additional business opportunities that may be out there. If you do reach in a cold way, and that's probably the worst option you have, at least do your homework and read what that person has written about themselves, and try to customize that message in a way that will make them stop and say, how do you know so much about us? How do you know so much about me? The elevator example I use is that if you get that message and you're riding an elevator and you forget about the floor you wanted to get off, that means the message has attracted you in a way that is likely to get a reply from you. And ask a very simple question. Don't go for the sale. It may take a number of communication or messages and outside of LinkedIn to even start engaging that person.
Okay, Daniel. Now, my last question to both of you gentlemen is one small piece of advice that people should remember, that their message matters most, and then how they can effectively deliver it. What is one thing in whatever the setting, George, they should never forget, they should always keep in mind?
Keep in mind that you'll never be perfect. Your message will never be perfect. What's key is to make it effective. After you delivered your message, did people move in the way you wanted them to move? And you won't move all of them, but did you move most of them in the way you wanted to move? And if you did, the message was effective.
Right. And Daniel, on LinkedIn?
A simple and stupid advice: try to read the message before you send it and put yourself in that person's shoes. And in most cases, if you're thinking authentically, you would look at it and say, no, I wouldn't respond to that message. That entails harder work. That entails more research. That entails shortening the message. Okay, there's a quote saying, I didn't have time to write a short letter, so I wrote a long letter. 90% of our job is shortening and editing and making it stand out. It's tough work, but try to reread your message before you send it out.
Right. Thank you so much, gentlemen. George Torok, live from Canada. Daniel Alfon, live from Israel. And Khudania Ajay, you're very much own. I was trying to ask the right questions for the audience. Hope it has been an educative session. We will continue to bring in more such information and tips and insights from these two gentlemen as soon as possible and whenever there is a chance. With this, It's a wrap on this edition of the KJ Masterclass Live. Thank you very much indeed.